table adapter dot fill, and when we don't specify any parameters to the fill statement, we get all the records. So basically what it does is it updates that data set with whatever's in the database right now, and then does a refresh on the data view grid. And that, of course, we have to do that because if we didn't, what we'd get is this. What do you think is going to happen? So I'll come in here, I'll edit, I'll delete.
It didn't update.
It's gone out of the database, but I haven't told this data grid to go look at the database and get the records again. So it's still showing in here. It's in this little, it's on the form.
But if you close that form and open it again.
Right, but if I exit out and start up again, it really is gone. Does that make sense? So the form that calls the Form 1 has a responsibility to check after Form 2 is done and see whether anything's changed. Alright, so then if we look at the button add, which was this right down here, basically all we do is we assign the rec ID equal to 0, which is my way internally of remembering that this must be an add operation because there cannot be a rec ID of 0 in the database. So if Form 2 finds a rec ID of 0, it must be because I'm trying to add a new record. So I set it equal to 0, then I show the dialog, and then I go ahead and just fill the adapter and refresh the grid. What could be easier, right? Now I've placed, I know, and everybody kind of smirks, but you have this example. The lab is going to ask you to do something
Similar.
very similar with student data. And so let's rewind all the way back to the beginning of class on Friday. What was the very first step when we start a new database project?
Create a database.
Create the database. And I want you to use Excel as your database so that you can keep it in your zip file, and when you send it to me, I'll have everything I need to run it. But don't start out trying to, I wouldn't even start out by doing your forms. Create your database and then get your data set and all that other stuff. So let's go back over here.
You said Excel or Access for a database?
Access.
The lab said it.
Access. So I want to walk through what happens when we add a new record here. So we're going to add a record. Oh, I found a bug. I just deleted that.
It wanted you to re-add it.
Huh?
Said it wanted you to re-add it.
No, I think it was because I already had, I don't know why. I feel kind of bad. So my code has a bug. So fix that in the lab. So let's add another sandwich name. So what sandwich should we add here? How about a breakfast sandwich? It is breakfast time after all. And what's usually on your breakfast sandwich?
Eggs.
Egg and cheese and ham. How's that? Ham and American, and what are those little
English muffin.
yeah. You know your breakfast sandwiches, Josh.
I just had one.
All right. So we'll save that, and there it is right there. So when we saved that, I want to show you this code because it's the rec ID when we came in was 0. It was not greater than 0. So we came down to this piece of code, which takes our dataset dot sandwich. And remember, what does the dataset give us? What's that? Dataset is it's a representation of our table in memory. Okay? These terms are, the dataset is a representation of the data. So what we can say is we can say add sandwich row. That's one of the built-in functions here. And what do you suppose it needs to know in order to add a sandwich row?
You need to know everything out of the text box.
Right, so the first thing we pass in is the sandwich name textbox.text value, which is whatever the user typed in the sandwich name text box. And then the second is the description, and the third is the meat, and then the cheese, and then the bread, and so on. And basically, when you have this function here, let's see, add sandwich row, you can, maybe you can't see, it's kind of small. It will actually tell you the order that all this information needs to go in. It says sandwich name, description, meat, cheese, bread, mayo, lettuce, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense? So it tries to help you out, but all you have to do then is really just pass in the data and, of course, do an update. So here all I did when I was editing was I ended my edit, and then here I added my row to my data table, and either way I just updated it, and then it was written down to the database. And really, as soon as this update fires, I could go into my Excel database and open it up and see that that record was there.
You keep saying so.
Do I access? Access. I really don't like access, but in this case it's pretty good. Where did it put it for us too? References, project. I don't quite remember where it puts it. It puts it someplace, it copies it in. It knows where it is. Okay. Servers, toolbox, and data sources. So, what do you think we would have to do if I wanted to add tomato to this screen right here?
Drag over the checkbox.
So just like that.
Lettuce with it, yeah.
There's lettuce, and there's tomato. Now that looks kind of funny, right? Lettuce, checkbox 1, is that the way we want it to look?
It looks like it's double labeled.
So what we have here is we actually have a label control and a checkbox control. So what I'm going to do is bring up the Properties Explorer, and what can I change?
Hide it.
Hmm?
You can hide it.
I can hide the checkbox,
Yeah.
and let's see, visible is false, but then it won't show the checkbox at all.
Just delete that name.
Right. Oh, what happened to my visible
Or
here?
put enabled, or,
What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the text, and I'm going to delete the label on the checkbox.
Double labeled.
Now notice, just by dragging it over, it gave it a name. Can you guys see this?
Lettuce checkbox.
Lettuce checkbox. That's pretty smart. It knew what it represented. Now how would it know that? How would this thing here know that it was the name? Any idea?
it's unique identifier.
Well, the system seems to know when we drag it over to call it the right thing. And then if we look in this data bindings area here, we have a little place we can open, we see that we have, it says that there is a, notice if I drop this down under data bindings, that's what this is. If I go to text, it knows it's part of the sandwich binding source, and it knows it's bound to the sandwich name field. That's the reason you don't have, and I could change it here, right? I could say, oh, that's not bound to sandwich name, that's actually bound to the bread. And if I run it now,
Right, I'll show it.
let's see, edit. Yep, wheat and wheat. I can have two fields, two text boxes bound to the same data source, right? I lost that name. So it's in this little data binding area here that I want to make, it automatically does it for me, but if you were to do it by hand, what you would do is if we just delete that, you would come over here, you would choose a text box, you would drop it right there, you would go into your data bindings, you would choose sandwich name, and then you'd give it a name like sandwich name text box, right? And I think
Let's do the same thing I did before.
that's all the magic that we have happen. And the name of it really didn't matter. Why did it have to be called the sandwich name text box?
To make it feel better.
I mean, there is actually a reason it needs to have a name. The only thing it really needs a name for is because when we saved it,
It has some names
Right
for
here?
those.
I use the name, the text box name .text. So you just got to make sure that wherever you use it, it would have to have the same name.